Thanks so much for joining me for this episode of the But First She Failed podcast. I am so excited about today's episode. Today's guest is the vice president and executive producer of the iconic Spanish language news magazine show Primer Impacto on Univision, Yuri Cordero. Yuri is also an author of the Amazon bestseller La Virtud del Proceso, or The Virtue of the Process, that's also available in English. In addition, she's also the co-author of the book Winning Strategies for Success that she wrote with the legendary speaker and author Brian Tracy. Yuri's an international speaker, and through her brand HighGrace, she empowers and mentors leaders, helping them walk confidently in their power and authority. She's a woman of faith that is passionate about public service, actively supporting nonprofits such as NAMI Miami, Todo Autismo, and serves as an ambassador to MBCF. A chaplain and devoted mother of three, she lives in South Florida where she continues to inspire and lead with purpose. Yuri, thank you so much for being here today. I am so excited to have this conversation with you today.
Thank you so much. I'm super grateful, and I'm so happy that you were able to accommodate my time. Early is best. For everyone who's listening to us, it's 8:00 in the morning.
So
So,
super
we're going to have a fresh conversation. So it's going to be wonderful.
Yes, fresh-eyed. Yes, yes. Before we hop in, I just want to take a minute to extra honor you because I was mentioning to you offline that so the listeners know, Yuri, actually I had the honor of working with her during my time at Univision. We didn't work together on the same show, but I always saw her from afar, and you have just such an amazing reputation. Your reputation precedes you. You have just, you're just a person of character. I think so many people can attest to that. And though I didn't work with you, siempre me caíste bien. O sea, you were always someone that you could tell you were a true leader because you always seemed like you had such a great character, which is, especially in a very high stressful situation like national news, it's kind of rare to find that, I think. And so I'm really excited to have you on and just hear all you have to share with our audience today.
No, it takes a team, most definitely. I could never do or produce a program as important as Primer Impacto by myself. We are a team. I don't take the credit for everything that happens there. If it wasn't for every single person that is a part of the team, to not to be redundant, it wouldn't happen. And it's been so successful for 31 years. I've been there 27. And I say that and I can't believe it, but believe it or not, my son is 27. I've been there since my son was a year old.
Wow.
And it's been a long journey, but I've enjoyed it so much. It's helped me grow in so many different ways. And I really love what I do. I don't think anyone spends almost 3 decades at a job that they don't love. I mean,
Yeah.
it's impossible. You
Yeah,
have
yeah.
to be so passionate about what you do in order to be successful. And I think that's been the reason why I've stuck around. Is something that I really love, and that
Yeah.
I think I can continue to do for a very long time.
Yeah, I love that. And I just want to say for anyone listening, if you are Hispanic, you know Primer Impacto because you probably grew up watching it on TV. I know in my life, Primer Impacto actually played a significant role. It was one of the first times as a young, what led me to journalism. I remember watching Primer Impacto in the 90s when I was growing up. And I remember Maria Celeste was on at
And
the time.
Mirka Maria Celeste were the original ones. I still speak with them both. I
Yeah.
work with them both, and I worked with the creator of Primer Impacto. She's a
Wow.
mentor to me till this day.
Wow, that's incredible. And I just remember for my whole generation, in the 90s, seeing Hispanic women on national TV and such a show. I remember Primer Impacto was new at the time, relatively new at the time. And I just remember being so taken aback and just seeing Latinas on TV.
It broke barriers. The program broke barriers. It was the first time on national television where two women were the anchors of a program, two Caribbean women. One
Amazing.
was a Puerto Rican, the other one was Cuban.
Yeah.
That had never been seen before. They were sexy and they were smart.
Yes.
They
Yes.
weren't just talking heads.
Yeah.
They were journalists, and it was amazing. I really admire them for being the breakers of new things. So many people now have two women anchors on their programs, and it was because of our show.
Yeah.
Just
Amazing.
like the weather anchor.
Yeah.
Jackie Guerrido.
Yeah.
So, she's beautiful, she's smart, and so many women have now this super attractive weather anchor, for the air. So, I think what makes a difference is that beauty and power definitely go together.
Yes, yes. For me, it inspired me. Like I said, it inspired a whole generation. For me specifically, I remember when I saw them, I was like, wow, I can do this one day. I want to do that one day.
Absolutely.
I can be in television or I can work in this field, and which eventually led into Univision. So I've Primer Impacto, I always have so much honor for it, and just I'm so excited. I'm going to ask you the icebreaker question that I ask everyone when they come on the podcast. What did you fail at this week?
I don't consider it a failure. I always, when something happens that I'm not happy with, or a decision that perhaps I feel I could have done better, I say, well, what could I have done better? For example, I can't remember something that I think I would have done wrong. I think they're just decisions. Every time we make a decision that perhaps the outcome that we get is not exactly what we wanted. What could I have done different? Where did I go wrong? Perhaps I should have asked for counsel. Perhaps I could have done it one way or the other. But at the end of the day, everything works out for the good, whether it's a lesson or it prevents future problems. And when I think about problems, every time that the first thing that comes to my head is work. Like, what decision could I have done better? What could I have done to make this a better program? And you know what makes the difference when you make decisions is pre-planning, especially in my show. It's a lot of pre-planning. But I also say that happens in life. If you're facing a difficult decision that you have to make, pre-plan, think about it, seek for counsel, seek for opinions of people that are part of your board, your personal board, because I'm sure a lot of us have that. And when I mean of a personal board is a board of people that you know that want the best for you and that perhaps are experts in that. Like, I would never mix perhaps my spiritual board with a producer board.
Mhm.
So look for that and you'll make the right choice. But even then, sometimes,
Yeah.
like, if I know that I have to do something, I won't go to a board. I'll follow my instinct. I'll follow my gut. It has never failed me.
That's great. That's great. I love that. And I believe the same thing, right? I think in life, there's always a saying that the listeners probably heard me say a bunch of times, but I say there was this one statement that I heard that changed my mindset on this forever. It's not either you win or you lose in any situation. It's either you win or you learn in any situation, right? So I agree with you. Any situation we can it's what could I have learned? What did I learn from the situation? What could I have done better? How can I improve? And I love that mindset. It's so powerful. Like, you reframed it so much that you couldn't even think of anything originally. So that's incredible. I love that. And Yuri, could you tell the listeners a little bit more about what you do, about your role at Primer Impacto, about your books, about HighGrace, your business, all the things? I want to hear about it all.
Well, every time I introduce myself in places, I always say I am a daughter of God first. I'm a woman of faith. I'm mother of my children. And the huge blessing in my life is being the vice president and executive producer of Primer Impacto. And I put God first because a long time ago, when I was coming out with my book, I had a bunch of interviews, but one has stood out so much because of my response. And the woman asked me, and she was a psychologist. She asked me, well, Yuri, what have you been faithful to for the past 30 years? Because I've been in the business 33 years. In less than a second, I said success.
Mm.
And I was happy with the interview until I sat back at home and I was seeing the interview. I didn't say God. I didn't say my children. I didn't say my husband at the time because I'm divorced. And I'm like, how could I say success? I
Mhm.
said, something has to change. And the thing is that a lot of us feel like success should be number one in our lives. But the definition of success is so different for every one of us. For me, success was my job, my books, getting all these accolades. But no, I was also successful in my home, even though I was divorced. I was successful is something that happened, but I have three beautiful children. I'm still friends with my ex-husband. And I've been able to accomplish with them. They've all gone to college. They've all done what they're supposed to do. They go to church. They're of good. It's just situations happen. So I feel like, but I don't feel that success should have been number one. So after that, I've been working diligently on everything that I do in my life. And how did I begin? Well, Let's see. If we can talk about my book is called La Virtud del Proceso and the Virtue of the Process in English. And it came after I met with the VP and executive producer of another program. And I went into her office and I said, "Oh my gosh, I really love everything that you're doing. You're writing books and you're speaking publicly." And we started talking about my story. And she says, "So when are you going to write your book?" And I said, "Nobody's going to want to read my book. You know, I don't have that kind of audience. I'm not like you." And she says, "Oh, okay, so let me get this straight. You help everyone be successful. You open doors and you don't use any of that knowledge for yourself." And
Mm.
she confronted me
Wow.
and she says, how could you not do all that you do for others for you?" And I said, "Oh my gosh." So I started writing. I started writing and I wrote that book in 6 months.
Wow.
6 months. And I launched it and it was great. And after that, I began completely changing a lot of things about I was in the background for many, many years. I was in the background for many, many years. And now I'm in the open, I'm in the forefront. I speak at conferences. The thing is that when I think back, it didn't start with the writing of the book. I was constantly donating my time to public school with my children. And I used to talk about journalism. I have like little certificates forever and a day. So God had been training me for a very long time to speak in public. Plus, before I got to Univision, I was an anchor and a reporter for a local TV station for 6.5 years. I also worked in American radio. I was a bulletin anchor and reporter for 610 WIOD. I feel very comfortable in front of the cameras. It's just that when I got to Univision, I was offered a job as an assignment editor. An assignment editor is someone that assigns stories. So I did take the job, of course, because when I was in college, I promised myself that I would be at the network level in 10 years. And I made it in 6.5 because I worked on the air for 6.5. But a year into it, I go to my boss and I said, "Well, Maria, you know that I can do more than this. I am a reporter. I'm this and that." She was like, and she spoke to me straight, which is a language that I understand. I'm very direct. And she says, "I didn't give you a job as a reporter. I gave you a job as a producer." So I said, "Okay." So I had a decision to make. I wasn't going to give up the network job. Sometimes closed doors are a blessing because today I have the job of the woman that said no. Today I am the leader of that show. And it was because she did not allow me to be in front of a camera. You never understand the plans until you go through everything that you need to go through. I didn't just stay at the desk. I became the lead of the desk. I became a field producer. Then I planned some of the major stories of the program, some of the major coverages of the program. I was often the one that was sent out to do all the hurricanes and all the major things in the field. Then I became the general producer of the show, then executive producer. And then I was given the title of vice president. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. All these things happened because of a closed door at the beginning of my career. It just takes time. It
Wow.
takes time. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, that's so powerful because I think so often people have moments where maybe they have closed doors or, things don't work out the way that they want and they can beat themselves up or they can be, very it can derail them and sometimes they stay derailed, right? And I love how you kind of pivoted and you were okay and you were like, this is what I'm gonna do, and you went forward and look at how it worked out, right? Like even that verse, like all things work together for the good of those that are called according to his purpose. And there's that Bible verse and that kind of reminds me of that, right? Like this eventually worked out for the good, and I think that's so powerful. And a show, I mentioned it before we started recording, but a show like Primer Impacto or just working in national news in general, it's a very, I would say, like, it's very competitive. It can be cutthroat, for lack of a better term. It's very competitive. I think it's not easy to rise up the ranks. What do you attribute your success to when it comes to that? What do you think kind of helped you get to where you are today?
I am extremely disciplined. It's not motivation. Motivation, you would need to be like a cheerleader every day. And sometimes we're not our own cheerleaders. Sometimes we're tired and we don't want to get up. Sometimes we're not feeling well, and we don't want to do it, but it's pushing through and doing it what you need to do every single day. That is what has made me successful. I do it despite being tired, despite not wanting to get up, not wanting to deal with certain situations. I still push through. And there was a wonderful TEDx speaker that I heard that she said, what many leaders have in common is grit. And that is absolutely true. We have grit. We work hard. We push through, even if others don't. We, lift others and we try to get them to do what has to be done. Also, I always do, even if others don't want to do certain things, I'm always willing to do it because nothing is beneath me. Nothing is less than me. The reason why I am successful is because I will pick up a cable if I have to, just like I will make monetary decision dealing with thousands and thousands of dollars. It's from the ground to the office. It doesn't matter. You have to be willing to do whatever it takes in order to be successful. And that's what I've done. I've been disciplined, I've been obedient, and I have grit. I definitely have grit.
I love that. I love the discipline because I think so often we think it just requires a lot of talent. Like you just have to be the most talented person, or you just have to be the most connected person, or you just have to be insert X, right? But it's so I feel like discipline is so underestimated, right? Like I feel like a lot of people don't talk about how no, it's really discipline. It's really waking up and doing the things you don't want to do day after day that get you there, right? So, and I think often a misconception too is that like you just said, motivation, like, oh, she's doing great because her life must be easy, or she must just always be motivated. I need to be on that level. But it's like you said, it's not motivation. It's that you do the things when you don't feel like doing it. So your book, The Virtue of the Process, is an Amazon's bestseller list on in Spanish, and we're really excited now it's available in English as well. Could you walk us through kind of why you felt that it was so important to get this book out to the public? What led you to writing this book?
The Virtue of the Process was supposed to be a book about leadership. It wasn't supposed to be about my life and everything that I went through. But as I started writing the book, I noticed that from a very young age, I was making very difficult decisions. I have worked since I was 13 years old. I am 55 now. I don't mind saying my age. I have cherished every moment. I have never been without a job. I understood that because of the difficult situation that I grew up in, I needed to fight for myself. And I didn't realize that until I started getting older and I started realizing all the difficulties of my family. I didn't have a dad, and my mother was a manic depressive schizophrenic. I grew up with my grandparents. My grandparents since I was 6 months old. My mother had difficult mental illness, which would get good and bad constantly. That's the reason why I serve at NAMI Miami, to help others in their walk with mental health and to help their families. And because of that, I think understanding from an early age that I had to do what I needed to do in order to get ahead, that no one can do it for me, is what made the difference. Knowing that no one was there to do it for me made the difference. I put myself through college. After that, I worked full time during college. I went to school full time, and I was a manager full time at a Home Depot. I was there for 6.5 years. I was there for 6.5 years. So I understood early that I had to work hard. I had to work hard in order to make it. And that's what I've done all my life. I think God has put people in my life that have seen the dedication. He's definitely put people that have seen what I'm capable of and has opened the doors for me. But it hasn't been easy. It's taken me a long time.
I think that your story of resilience is so powerful. I know you also mentioned, I know in the book, it also mentioned that you walk through cancer as well, and you've walked through so many things, and just, I'm so impressed. But you are thriving in so many ways. And, obviously, we've already talked about some of the amazing things that you have going on. But was there ever a season in your life where you feel like maybe you quote unquote failed? And if so, how? And what did you learn from that season? How did it get you to where you are today?
When after I went through my cancer surgery, I went through three of them. It was very, very hard. I was home alone one day. It was the summer. My ex-husband couldn't take any more days of work. We had moved to a new house. My family was far, and I was home alone. And we had purchased a new bed, and it was so tall that I couldn't bring myself up from the bed. When I got back, I had to like had to I had to drag myself out of the bed like little by little in order to get up. And when I sat back down on the bed, I heard a voice, and it said, "The world doesn't stop because you're not here. The world doesn't stop because you're not here." And I knew it was God because it was soft, as it says on the Bible, and it wasn't judgy. It was just a fact. And at that moment, I understood that the one that had to change was me. I had to value myself. I had to give myself time to heal. I had to give myself an opportunity to rest when it was necessary. I couldn't say yes to everything. I had to understand that sometimes I had to say no. I am a yes person. I am a yes person. I love to say yes to everything because I have a servant spirit. So I always say yes, yes, yes. It doesn't matter how difficult it is. But at the end of the day, it was some things were just too much. I needed to say yes to me as well. I needed to say yes to Yuri because for many, many years, I put myself last, and that's not the order. I'm not last. I always put everything before me, my job, my children, my husband, my everything. And that's not it. There is an order. There is an order. And I was completely out of order. And it took me time to change. Sometimes I find myself getting into old habits. I feel like I'm a recovering workaholic
Yeah.
because I found my happiness, and I still do. I love my job. I love my job. I found my identity in my job, and that's not who I am. So what happens? I ask every single person who is listening to the podcast, what happens if tomorrow I am not the vice president and the executive producer of Primer Impacto? What happens to Yuri? Well, Yuri continues to be a completely and utterly successful communications expert who first is a woman of God and a mother to three wonderful kids. I'm still that. I'm still full of life, of wisdom that I can give others in a different field. That it's a wonderful thing to be the supervisor there. I love my job. I love my job. I love what I do. I love going into work every day, even if I'm tired, even if I'm sick. I love to be there. But everything has a beginning and an end. And for all the women that are facing changes in their lives, perhaps that season is over and a new wonderful thing is coming. Do not despair. Do not despair because absolutely everything that happens to us, even the bad things sometimes, eventually works out for the good. There's something new. There's something new. The Bible says, don't you see, I'm doing a new thing. So when he's doing a new thing, just be patient, but be ready. Prepare yourself for the new things that are coming because that new season of your life perhaps is everything that you were waiting for. When I began in Univision, I didn't want to be off camera, but he was doing a new thing. And look at what he did with that no. He made it into 1,000 yeses. He made it into 1,000 yes. So I tell people not to worry.
Oh my God, I love that. There's so much wisdom in that. Oh my God, thank you for sharing that. And I 100% agree with you with everything you said there. And Yudi, my understanding is that you also have a book out that's co-written with the legendary speaker and author Brian Tracy. Winning Strategies for Success, Succeeding in Business in Any Market. Could you talk to me a little bit about that book and about what, just about that project?
Oh my God, that book was a dream come true. If you would have told me ever in my life that I was going to sit beside Brian Tracy, I would have said, there's no way. There's no way. But I had spoken at a conference with a lady by the name of Margarita Pasos. Margarita Pasos is like the Spanish Tony Robbins. I
Mm.
couldn't believe that I was standing in a stage with that amazing woman. I told the people in that conference, I'm like, let me explain to you all who you are to me. You are like my first aunts and uncles, padrinos and madrinas, but for me, because this is my first conference, even though I had done many conferences with someone at her level like that. It was a dream come true. I couldn't believe it. And she co-wrote a book with Brian Tracy. And before that meeting, I had gone into his website and it said, "Would you like to author a book with him?" And I applied. I applied. I applied to write a book. I had 3 interviews with his staff. And then they finally called me and said, "Yes, we want to accept you to be a co-writer." His books have many authors. Each of us write a chapter, and my chapter is called The Cronus Method.
Oh.
And the Cronus Method talks about the difference between the earthly time and God's time. And you would think that they would not want to publish a chapter like that, but they most certainly did. And what I tell absolutely everyone is that we all live in Chronos. We all live in Chronos. We live on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We measure time, but there's also God's time. And in God's time, we don't know exactly when he wants us to do things. But do you know where I discovered God's time? I
Right.
discovered it doing television, because he tells us, just like in TV, to value every single moment. So sometimes we walk out of his purpose because we don't do what we need to do when he tells us to do it. And we change his plans.
Wow.
That's why people sometimes don't walk into their careers or to their purpose in their calling until later on in life, because they veered off. But I tell people not to worry, because you will definitely walk into it. Just be careful that you don't walk completely out of what you're supposed to do, that you understand what are your gifts and talents, that you listen to that voice that's telling you, hey, have you ever thought about doing this? Have you ever thought about doing that? Whatever it is that you wanted to do, it makes sense to me now that I speak publicly. It makes sense to me now that I speak in conferences, that I write books. I have been getting ready for that for 20 something years. It wasn't overnight. That time that I was outside of the camera was my training ground. It was a training ground. Consider your season as a training ground. What is it that I have to learn now that's going to help me in the future? What is it that I have to learn now that's going to put me in the pinnacle of other things?
Yeah.
I just do not fear.
That is so good. I wanna say mic drop there. That was so good. That's so amen to everything you said. And what can someone do? Like, how do, because you mentioned, like, not walking out of your purpose, right? What advice would you give to someone that's, like, maybe starting off their career, and as far as, like, timelines, like you said, don't match up, right? So often, even my own story, I thought I was gonna be, rise up the ranks in Univision, and then I ended up going to a different network, and to Fusion, and things didn't pan out that way for me. But I know that my story has resonated with so many, because so often doors close and we think things were supposed to work out and look a certain way, but then God does something else in our lives. So I guess my question to you is, how does someone know how not to walk out of their purpose, like you mentioned? What advice would you give to someone that's maybe in the beginning of their career?
I think that there are 3 steps, and it's for someone at the beginning or in whichever stage of their life that they are at. There are 3 steps. First, you have to visualize what is it that you want to do. Then you have to plan it, but then you most definitely have to execute. And it sounds simple, right? But there are so many steps to visualization. You have to completely sit there and write everything that you want to do. Write every single step, everything. How do you plan it? Well, what's step number one? What's step number two? What's step number three? It's not that simple. And then you have to do it. I always tell people, what does every successful person have in common? Every single one. What do I have in common with Brian Tracy, with Tony Robbins, with
John,
icons of the television like Jorge Ramos, Maria Elena Salinas? What do I have in common with all those people? What do you have in common with them? They all began. They started. If you don't start, you'll never get to where you want to get to. And a lot of people sit on their dreams, on their talents, because they're afraid to fail. Failure is part of the process. Failure is what gives you the virtue and the knowledge not to make the same mistake again. It is incredible. In the book I write, your process is your progress. Process, when you look at the meaning, a synonym of it is progress. It is everything that you're doing to get to where you want to go. But it takes time sometimes. And it may not happen overnight. Maybe for some people happens overnight, and maybe for you it doesn't. It didn't happen for me overnight. There's a famous motivator and leadership teacher. His name is Earl Nightingale. He says that it takes 5 years for you to become full in what you want to do, like an expert in your field. And when I spoke with Margarita Pasos, I remember I began 19, this new walk, these books and everything. And 5 years later, I was on that stage. And I was like, but if you are way more past than 5 years, it doesn't matter. Because when I look back, there's a picture that I have in my book of myself, a little girl sitting on a tricycle, just looking forward. Everything that happened to me since I was a little kid is what got me to where I am today. So everybody has a different timeline. Just don't walk out of yours. Can you imagine if I would have walked out of Univision when my boss said, I don't want you to be a reporter here. You can't be a reporter. You're a producer.
yeah.
Perhaps I wouldn't be speaking with you today. I am in a very privileged position. I praise God for that, of power and authority. I am, by the grace of God, the leader of one of the most important programs on Spanish television, the longest running program on Spanish TV. And isn't it beautiful that I'm a woman of God? That he has put someone that believes in him to be in that position right now. Amen. For a time as this. Perhaps there's a purpose for that. And I tell everybody that's listening to me, perhaps you're there because you're opening doors for other people. Do you know how many people invite me to places because they're like, oh, you're a producer, you're a TV producer, and you're also, a Christian. And all these doors open. And we as Christians in positions of authority are able to reach perhaps others that maybe other people don't have access to. I've spoken to artists about God. I've spoken to other leaders. I speak in public places. There's a bigger purpose to everything, absolutely everything that you're doing. And once you realize that, it is an amazing, amazing revelation.
Yeah.
Because I didn't see it that way.
Wow, that's so powerful. And I know it's going to resonate with so many listeners. It's impacting me as I'm here talking to you. So I know it's going to impact so many listeners. What would you say to someone that maybe they are, they're starting a field, but that's very competitive? Because, you talked about, like, I think that goes hand in hand, right? I think so often we don't start because we're scared of failing. And then especially if you're going to a field that's very competitive, where there's not, journalism is a very competitive field. There's not a lot of spots, for these coveted roles and especially with big networks, big name shows. What advice would you give to someone that wants to start, but they're, a little bit scared? What can, to go into follow their dreams?
Yeah, I mean, you can't expect. Can you imagine if I would have gotten the job at Univision and I would have immediately said, well, I want to be the boss of the program? No, it takes time. Walk in the door and take whatever job it is that is available right now. And little by little, you'll get to know people. You'll get to learn the ropes. Others will open doors for you. That's what happened to me. I began at the assignment desk and now I'm the supervisor of that job. But it took time. You have to prove yourself. You have to prove yourself. You have to learn. You can't expect to be the supervisor of a program or the head of anything without knowledge. It's not going to last. It's not going to last. It's so important for people to know every aspect of the field that they're in. When you see, even let's make it simple, when you see influencers that have millions of followers, it didn't happen overnight. It didn't. They tried and failed so many times until they finally were able to get their niche, to get their following, and then they started growing and started making a difference. You know, I want everyone to understand that every single person that is listening to me, that you are a leader. You are a leader. We were all created to be leaders, and a leader is not necessarily a title. The definition of leadership is someone that has influence over others. It doesn't say anything about a title. It's called influence. And influence is a powerful, powerful thing because it can be used for good. And of course, it can be used for bad. But when you use it for good, there's so many possibilities because everything that you give, you will most definitely get back. You will get back, and I just want to encourage every single person that is listening to me that do not worry, because all you got to do is try your best and not be afraid to make mistakes, and knock on those doors and try to get that job at that place where your dream job is. I wanted to be at the network level. I took the job that I didn't want, but now I have the job that I could have never dreamt of. I didn't know that I was going to end up being the leader of that show. So I want everyone to feel encouraged to walk in the path that has been laid out for them.
It's powerful. Wow. I'm going to keep saying that to every response you give. I'm like, it's so powerful. And Yuri, oh my gosh, thank you so much for being here. Where can people find you? Where can they purchase your book? I'm so excited to dive into your book too. Where can people purchase it? Tell us all the things.
Well, they can go, it's easier if they just go to my website. It's called Yuri, Yuri Cordero, altogether.com. There are my books with Brian Tracy, my books in English and Spanish. I have a free book completely in Spanish that is called Activate Your Greatness, Activa tu Grandeza. They can just download it, and they're like daily messages to help you push through your day. It's really nice. And if you can go there, you sign up to my email blast, and you'll get little messages every day and the things that I'm doing. I really look forward to hearing from all of you, and thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very grateful. It's odd for me, believe it or not. I normally speak Spanish.
You did
I
great.
really have to speak in English.
Yeah, you did amazing.
But I'm super grateful. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Yes. Thank you so much for being here. It's such a treat. Like I said, it's such a treat to have you. And you just spoke, I think, to the heart of every listener and to the heart of this is very aligned with what this podcast is all about. So just thank you so much for being here. And hopefully you can come back one day. We'll talk about your next book.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for being here.